Now I'm going to show you how to tie a Carolina rig. Pretty easy really, but you got to start in the right order. I like to use two lines. My main line, if I'm using monofilament or fluorocarbon, maybe 17 to 16 to 20 gamma fluorocarbon edge, and then I'll downsize from, if I'm using 20, I might use 16-pound leader. If I'm using 16-pound main line, I might use 12-pound leader. I want it to be just different enough so if I get hung up, only the leader will break off. But I've also started using braid. I've started using 40-pound and 50-pound gamma. Gamma makes a torque braid, and then from there, then I'll tie a 16-pound gamma fluorocarbon leader. Okay, so I have that differential. So if I have to break off, I have something to leave behind. The very first thing you need to do is to tie your leader line to the swivel, and it's all going to be with a Palomar knot. I just use just a regular swivel. Swivel to me is just a line connector. That's all it's going to do, is allow me to put a leader onto the main line. Palomar knot, however you tie it, I tie it, you know, basically the same way every time. I make a double the line, take the loop, pass it through, take the swivel, put it back through, cinch it down. Now I've got a Palomar knot. I don't bother cutting the knots until I'm done. Now I'm going to thread onto my main line. I'm going to put an egg sinker, or if you don't have an egg sinker, I like to use tungsten from Round Valley Tungsten, because with the fluorocarbon, with the braided line, tungsten is harder and gives you a much better feel as to what's going on the bottom. So I'm going to thread this main line in through here. That's the very first thing that I'm going to put on the main line. Put the weight down here. Then I'm going to take an 8mm plastic faceted bead. I like using the plastic beads because a glass bead, even though it makes a little bit more noise when it clicks up against that tungsten, it will chip. And if it chips, it has a sharp edge to it. If it has a sharp edge, it's going to cut your line. If it cuts your line, I hate to see grown men cry. So I put the bead on next, thread that on, and I use the bead, you know, it makes a little bit of noise when it clacks up against the weight. Okay, it makes a little bit of clicking noise, but it also will help protect the knot. Okay, so now I've got that part. Now I'm going to tie, if I'm using braid, I'm going to tie a double Palomar knot, where I'm going to take the Palomar knot, and now I'm going to tie it to the swivel. And again, you'll see why I do things in this particular order, because it allows me to tie a Palomar knot every step of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and double the line, put it in, and then with a double Palomar knot, I'm going to put that line back in again a second time. So I'll put make a second pass through here. So now I've got my Palomar knot just about ready to tie. I'll just do like I normally would, tie that overhand knot and take that loop, open it up a little bit, pull the swivel and the leader line through it like this. And now I've got a double Palomar knot. I do that when I'm tying braided line. It's just a habit, because I want it to be a really strong knot. So now, after I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and tie. You know, and the leader length is really what I'm going to be concerned with now. I leave my leader as long as I think I'll need it. Basically, if the water is very clear, I'll go with a longer leader. A longer leader could be 3 or 4 feet long. If the water's cold or muddy, then I might go to a shorter leader, because I want the weight is kind of like knock, knock, who's there? And all of a sudden, here comes my bait behind it. Well, when it's cold, fish don't go that far. They won't run that far to go chase down a bait. If the water's muddy, they won't see it. They won't go that far. So I use a shorter leader, so it's kind of like knock, knock, who's there? Instead of knock, knock, who's there, with a longer leader. So I'm going to use a shorter leader. So in this case, I'll probably use a leader that's about maybe 28 inches. Again, I'm going to tie my Palomar knot. I always tie my Palomar knots the same way with a hook. I always go in through the side of the hook without the point, because if I have to tie a drop shot, then I don't have to remember how to tie it. It's always the same way. So I go in through the back side, tie my overhand knot, just like we did on those other 2 knots, and put the hook back through it, pull it down, cinch it tight, and now I've got my Palomar knot tied. So now I go back and I cut my tag ends off. By the way, a lot of people see this and they go, oh, you use a fingernail clipper and it broke off. No, it didn't. I break it off right away. And what I do is I take a little file, and I only have to do this 2 or 3 times a year. As much as I use, it's only 2 or 3 times a year. I'll take a file and sharpen this up from time to time because I don't like to have 2 different cutting tools, one for braid, one for mono, so I just use one. A lot of guys will use one for braid and, you know, like a scissors or something like that, but this cuts, as you can see, it's cutting the mono really well and it cuts the braid really well. So now I've cut off everything. I've got my tag end out of the way, and your Carolina rig looks like this, okay? It's got the weight, the bead, the swivel, and the hook. I can attach whatever I want to. A lot of times you'll hear about a Carolina rig and a lizard. It's a very good bait to use on a Carolina rig, especially in the springtime. It has a lot of action to it. Usually the legs will move, the tail will move, and it kind of glides through. One other tip, sometimes I'll insert a glass rattle like this. I'll take a glass rattle and I'll insert it into my soft plastic, so when I shake the bait a little bit, it adds even more noise to it and the fish can find it. But I also think that a lot of times this isn't really rattling that much when you're moving the bait, but when the fish sucks the bait into his mouth and starts to rotate it to swallow it, that clicking noise sends out vibrations, kind of acts like it's something that's alive. One of my little secrets. Soaking your soft plastics, another thing that you want to do, soak it in bait attractants. I like Jack's juice because Jack's juice actually penetrates the plastic. And when you're moving a bait really, really slow, like a Carolina rig, where you're going to move it a little bit, stop, drag it a little bit, stop. Those kind of techniques where the fish actually can suck a bait in and spit it out really quick. You want something on there to help them hold on a little bit longer. And attractants really don't attract fish. What they do is they give the fish a reason to hold on longer, and they hide whatever you might be adding to the bait. Could be coffee, could be gasoline that you got, could be sunscreen, something that you're touching. When you touch that plastic, the fish sucks it in and goes, oh, I don't like copper tone, and they spit it right back out. Now, how do you thread a hook on here? Very simple, just like you would normally Texas rig. Take the hook point, stick it in about a 1/4 of an inch, then slide that bait up, rotate it around so that it now is over that bend on the hook, okay, like that. Then take the hook and mark where it comes, the bottom of the hook comes in contact with the soft plastic, right there. I'll mark it with my thumb. I'll take it and I'll penetrate right through the center of the bait, come out the back side of it like that, and to make it totally weedless, I will pull the plastic a little bit forward and just bury the point, and now I've got a weedless rig, and I can drag this Carolina rig just about anywhere. What you're going to do is you're going to make a long cast. I like a medium heavy rod, like about a 7-foot rod or a little bit longer. You're going to lob cast, okay, just lob it. Concentrate on casting the weight. Put the weight about 6 inches from the tip of the rod. Focus on casting that weight, and the lizard will follow, or whatever bait will follow it. Make that long cast, let it go to the bottom, and you're going to drag the bait, drag and stop. You don't have to constantly keep it moving. If you are, then you can. I mean, why not? If they're hitting it when you're moving it really fast, but that might mean that you could also go to a different type of bait, like a crankbait or something else that's moving. But a lot of times you're just going to drag it, stop, drag it, stop. When that rod gets to be at a 90-degree angle to your body, you're going to stop, because if you keep going back and you get a bite when your rod is back here, you have no room left to set the hook. So when you get to here, you reel your line, get your line back, or your rod tip back towards the bait, and start moving it again. Move it. Always move the bait with the rod. Don't move it with the reel. That way you can really control the speed. You can slow down a lot and move that bait and drag it along. When you do get a bite, sometimes you might feel a tap, tap, tap. What you want to do is you reel, feel, and pull, okay? It's a very good hook set for a Carolina rig. You reel, feel the fish, and pull, okay? A lot of times the fish will pull and they'll just start pulling the rod for you. Allow them to pull that rod till you get into the hook set position, and then just give one pull. Try the Carolina rig. Try it wherever you fish, whenever you fish, and you'll be catching fish this way too.